There it goes. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Mental Health Awareness. Um, Today is November 13th, 2023, and this is another episode of Jaws Coffee Chat with Jennifer A. Whitaker. We also have with us today Ann Fusel, and I am Elizabeth Oberkirsch of Oh My VA Admin Services. So we always like to give a special thanks to some great folks for replaying our shows on their platforms. Marcus Hart of Transform U Media, Zach Clayton of the PAC channel, Jay Stoyan of the Disability Channel, and Lawrence Wingate of Wingate Studios. We definitely appreciate their support and participation. So be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our social media pages, our groups, our YouTube channels, or wherever it is you came to find out about us. So let's get on with today's conversation on mental health awareness. Jennifer, take it away. Once she comes off mute. Hi, Ann. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. Working on some marketing, so that's fun.
Excellent. I love technology sometimes. I think today we wanted to talk a lot about how physical health illnesses have an impact on our mental health, the aspect. And that's true. I mean, anytime you're sick, you at least I tend to go through a certain amount of depression. Um, and I think that's typical with anybody
Yeah.
who gets physically sick. And then it's even more so on, I think, those of us who have mental health issues to begin with, acknowledged mental health, because I think a lot of people have mental
There
health
you go.
issues that they just don't necessarily acknowledge. There was Jennifer. She popped in for a second.
Yeah, no, you're going right on
Take
target.
it. No, keep going.
I just wanted to kind of get interacting with where we left off between things like so I at one point tested positive for RSV, and it had me uh stuck to basically quarantine for so many days. And with my extreme extrovert personality, not interacting led to depression. I already have the illness on a seasonally affected depression. And that typically means by the lack of sun, I get depressed. But then here was by the lack of social environment because I could not be around other people. So, does that anywhere tie into what we were talking about with your, I think it was a book where you wrote about different movies impacting? Do people like maybe watch more when they tend to be sick, or how's that work with that? Yeah. It's interesting because some folks, well, yeah, in general, people tend to watch, when you're sick, when you're physically sick, a lot of times you're staying home from work or school or whatever, and you just have more time on your hands. You feel like
But
you can't work, or
yeah,
you
less
work
energy to
from
be up and
home.
doing stuff around the house, and you're laying there.
Exactly. So you just have more time to watch TV, watch movies, that kind of thing. Some people, they can take it to extremes where they watch too much TV or movies. I know I can be guilty of that sometimes,
I used to be a
especially when I'm
teleholic,
physically sick.
self-diagnosed teleholic. If the TV wasn't on, I was miserable.
Yep, yep. So, you know, but yeah, I think that's definitely something that people can use for sure as a good thing, but then they can overuse it, and then it can turn out to be detrimental. So,
Have you ever
um,
seen that being sick causes them to change their decision of what they watch, like what we were talking about last week?
that's a good question. Not to my knowledge.
like I would imagine that people when they're sick would watch more like of their comfort movies, of the movies that they've seen before and they, want to see again. I know for me, when I am not feeling well, either physically or mentally, if I'm having really bad mental health day, I go towards movies that I love, like Inside Out, Princess Bride, movies that I've seen a million times, and they just help me through when I'm not feeling so great.
We watched Inside Out last night. It was great.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
About
There's
Inside
gonna
Out.
be a there's gonna be a sequel that comes out this summer, so I'm
That's what
very
I heard.
But this is, I think, the Inside Out. This is the movie about different emotions, right?
The girl who moves from her ice
Yeah.
hockey state to San Francisco, and
Yeah. So interesting that we mentioned that one on this episode, because actually that's one of the ones in my book dealing with autism I talk about that actually helps autistics learn emotions.
Oh, really?
yep,
Yes.
Yeah, I
And
talk
so
about
I
it in
talk.
my book too.
it's a
So
great
which book
movie.
is this? Which book do you mention and where does it tie into the theme of your book?
Yeah, so it's in my book, Our Favorite Movies: How Films Affect Our Mental Health, and it ties in with the theme in a couple of ways. One, because I talk in the book about what I call the ick factor, which is how much does a book help with my mental health or anybody's mental health, and how much does it have sort of negative stuff in it, racism, homophobia, violence, that kind of thing.
The icky stuff.
Yeah, the icky stuff. So it's like, to me, the perfect movie because it doesn't have any icky stuff and it helps me like tremendously and helps people in general tremendously. I mean, I know it's a movie that people talk about in the mental health sphere all the time. So I've been in group therapy when therapists have brought, videos, like multiple different group therapies where they show videos from the movie, and I've talked to a lot of people, and just the research I did for the book, they talk about Inside Out and how it helps kids and adults express emotions, understand emotions, that kind of thing. So,
And understand how they're all interconnected.
right. So and then I write about my own, you know, my own personal experience with it and just the different scenes, how much they affect me emotionally, how much it helps me to process my emotions. So I talk about it in various different ways in the book.
Definitely interesting. I'm I'm really interested in the fact that it's not just myself, but other people that find it useful in some way beyond just being a movie.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely something that I cannot recommend more to have everybody watch this. I cannot. I will shout it from the rooftops. Go see Inside Out, or go watch it on Disney Plus. Go, rent it. Go buy the DVD, whatever. Um, purchase off of iTunes or however you like to get your movies. Get it off of Prime.
Because you can
Whatever.
also enjoy it just as pure entertainment, because it has the comedy, it has the, you can go deeper in it if you want, but it also has just the general family feel good. Here's a situation and how they came through it as a group, and just simple, fun, cartoony movie that, occasionally has a funny thing as well as makes you want to cry at certain points.
Exactly. Exactly. I should be clear.
That
You
means it's
can't.
real.
It's not on Prime. It's you can rent it off of
Rented
Prime.
on Prime, yeah.
So yeah, that and as going back to the physical health question, I think another thing to remember is how tied in um our or how our mental health symptoms can cause physical symptoms, right?
Ah,
I know for me, a lot of my GI issues are tied into my anxiety issues. My anxiety causes them to be worse. So,
Right.
um,
That's
I've
true, and
been dealing with that.
that's why a lot of my doctors say that everything with me originates in the brain, no matter if it affects my digestive or anything else. It's nothing wrong with my other areas of my body, like say my organs or anything, versus it's just simply everything is messed up in my brain. And if my brain's not functioning, the rest of my body can't function.
Yep.
Exactly.
Whereas some of us, if our gut is unhealthy, it affects our brain and how
Mhm.
we think and how we react to things, because it really is an amazing body.
But that more so goes to confirm that they are correlated and coordinated as well
Mhm.
as, work together. One impacts the other.
Mhm.
Yep.
Very true. Very true.
I mean,
Yeah.
how many of us, if we have, say, anxiety, we also get, say, gassy or something because, it was something that started with whatever triggered our anxiety, but then it was the reverse, the anxiety triggered the stomach issues. Whereas a lot of people know that stomach issues trigger the emotions, but how many realize the emotions can trigger the stomach?
Right. It's very cyclical, and both can, each one can influence the other, and a lot of times you have no idea which one is doing what. Is it the triggering? Is your anxiety triggering the gut issues, or is your gut issues triggering the anxiety?
Yep. And I don't even think doctors really understand that fully yet. I think it's a
Yeah.
lot of guess and hit and miss
I think you're
still.
onto something there, EJ, because whenever I've seen my psychiatrist about anxiety, she never asks me if I'm having bowel issues or anything like that. Like, I mean, or anything else that has to do with digestion, right?
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, those we see their gastroenterologists for stuff like that don't ask us about our emotions.
Mm-mm.
So I think you're onto something that even the medical field doesn't understand its correlation. And so they don't properly treat or understand how to determine which one's the originator.
Yep. The holistic doctors are a little better at it, but even they don't understand it completely.
Which says it's probably one of those few fields of medicine that we still need to fully uncover and discover. Versus
Yeah.
where you and I'm not sure about Anne, but you and I can remember back in the 90s where we were compared to where we are now medically.
Yeah.
Do you remember those days, Anne?
Well, I got diagnosed with depression in 1999, and then bipolar and anxiety disorder in 2002. So I
I
lived
lived
through it.
with depression. I lived with the depression and anxiety from it actually started in like 1976 from a trauma that I was in. But it wasn't officially diagnosed until 2002 after 9/11 kicked it over the top.
But that uncovers something interesting. So, what was it like to have a diagnosis that no one even knew about if it even existed in the 70s?
There
How
weren't
was your journey different?
there weren't psychiatrists on every corner. It wasn't a common practice to go see a therapist. It was still a stigma back then that if you went to a therapist, you were severely mentally incapacitated. PTSD was only for like the military. I'm sure they had it back then, but it wasn't widely known that somebody who is in a car wreck as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old could have PTSD from it. Um, Regaining consciousness across from somebody that was in this driver's seat that you didn't know at that point was actually dead, which is what I had happen.
Well, see, and what you're talking about, I don't think PTSD was even fully known in the 90s and early 2000s to exist outside of the military people, because I was diagnosed in 1999 with bipolar. But that's what later years, I've told you that they ended up finding out that was PTSD I had all along.
Mhm.
Just that I think it was that late for PTSD to be understood outside of military causes. That's why I had bipolar, even though modern day you go to a doctor and they see the symptoms I have and they look at bipolar like there's no match here.
Mm-mm.
But if they look at PTSD, because like what EJ, that happened to me a year ago and happened back in May again, and so forth. That's every 6 months of my life. That of course I've been traumatized more than enough times to be,
Mhm.
PTSD.
Yeah. Whereas mine was, happened in 76, and then 9/11, the same brother that was in the same car wreck with me and almost died was 6 miles away from the towers.
Ooh.
So there was a connection there, even though I had nothing to do with the 9/11 event. The fact that I had a brother that close and didn't know what was happening with him, because I didn't know that he didn't work in those towers. He did a lot of temp jobs, and I think at some point worked in those towers, but I didn't know whether he was then or not. And cell phone coverage was limited, so we couldn't reach him. So it was like all over again, losing him again, possibly losing him again. And I was affected by the 9/11 for like 3 weeks. I couldn't stop crying. Even when I knew he was safe, I still couldn't stop crying, and because it triggered all the emotions that I've had all my life. And that's
And
when they
isn't it
finally said,
interesting?
okay, you have a chemical imbalance. If you had high blood pressure, would you take the medicine? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. I take, medicines for stuff all the time. Because you have a chemical imbalance. Take the antidepressant. And since then, now that everything's starting to balance out, I've realized it's more anxiety than it is depression, because they're so close to each other, whether it's anxiety
Your
or depression.
symptoms as well.
Yeah, exactly. The symptoms are just like that. And I've gotten through a lot of the depression and dealt with that now that I've been on the medication. But as I try to get off the medication, I'm realizing it's the anxiety that the medicine is helping with me. And I can't get off the medicine yet. So, but that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, and I was going to say, where does this tie in? What are you thinking about related to your book and these movies with what we're talking about? And
I'm trying to think. I think when it, I in my book, I go over my mental health journey, and I talk about, my time that I've been hospitalized over the years. And I actually got hospitalized not too long after 9/11, not because I knew anyone, but it just affected me so deeply. Um, just being very empathic, and I wasn't sleeping. I was constantly watching news, cable news, and
You
it
couldn't
was
not
just
watch it. It was everywhere.
exactly. And they kept showing the towers, and it was just I just completely lost it. And another thing, I think, if we're talking about what the state of psychiatric medicine is today versus even 20 years ago, let alone 40 years ago, I think it's just gotten better. I think therapists have improved. I think psychiatrists have improved. I think the stigma has improved. I mean, nothing is perfect, and I probably will never. I know it won't ever be perfect, because nothing in general is perfect.
that is
But,
true.
like for instance, I had a therapist once around that time tell me I needed to smile more.
That'll fix everything.
Exactly. I'm like,
Sarcastically only.
wow. What was
It
that?
does.
I said sarcastically speaking only.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I heard that, and I had some of the people that I saw around that time, um, they were just not helpful. Now I've got a great therapist, I've got a great psychiatrist. I'm very happy with my care team, but then there were some people who were not helpful.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot more emphasis on preventive care for mental health rather than after the fact that it always was before.
Yeah.
Because and with the stigma being lessened, there's a lot of ability to say, hey, let's be proactive on how to avoid. Like my case, it was 20 years 20 some years of dealing with it that probably caused the chemical imbalance rather than vice versa. I don't think I had the chemical imbalance. And if I had gotten the mental health that I needed back in the 70s and 80s, I think I would have dealt better with it and my body wouldn't have changed chemically to the point that it is now that I have a chemical imbalance.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Which says that there's some kind of science to where the experience in life impacts our chemicals, because PTSD is something onset by traumas, but it is a chemical imbalance. So something related to those traumas has to cause a chemical to make changes to become from balance to unbalance just because of the experiences in life.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is also the science we don't know yet.
But I think we're making strides towards knowing it by some of the preventive care and emphasis and understanding before you get to those stages.
Well, I think also if you think about, like, okay, so I have a Medicare Advantage plan because of my disability. And with Medicare Advantage plans, now if you get the right plan, you can get online gym memberships. And some of these quote fitness memberships are actually like recordings of therapy sessions to talk about emotional wellness or different things related to the science behind fitness, of how it's good for the mental health, and other things that are virtual events for those who are disabled. So they, like many of them, like me, can't drive, so they're suspended to where all they can do is what's in their house, unless they're taking a Medicare trip to or from the doctor. And these online memberships are getting to be where they provide basically kind of like free therapy sessions, but you're listening to someone's recording instead of actually interacting. And you have others that are fitness groups or yoga or doing arts like painting or something. There are these online activities that are, we didn't have, even 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago before the pandemic. That's one of those things that was the light that came out of darkness.
Yeah. The silver lining.
Yeah. So from that, we now have online stuff like that where people who are refined to just their house can have at least online activities to help with social interaction and other aspects of preventive and or maintenance of overall mental health well-being. And not just simply take the medication and then you go home and you're depressed because you are refined and can't talk to interact with people.
Yeah, I did a intensive outpatient program back in 2020. And that was all online, and I was so grateful because, well, obviously, because of the pandemic, that was not the time to be gathering in person, but also the place where I would be going for it is like 25 minutes from my house, and that's just a waste for me to drive. I mean, I can do it. It's just it's a good part of my day. I spend like almost an hour back and forth, and then however long I was going to be there. So I was really appreciative of being able to do that online.
Yeah.
seeing a lot of these activities I'm talking about are where we could be even people from on different sides of the world just having to be on a video at the same time. Kind of like we're doing this podcast now, where three people from three different parts of maybe the world or maybe the US, from where Anne's located, but still that we're not local and we can actually come online together. And that's kind of how these online fitness activities are, is even though they're online, there's still actual interaction with other people, like what we're doing here. Only the topic is the activity of some kind, whether it's an arts, and they walk you through how, try painting or drawing this sort of thing. Or it's here's, let me show you how to do these fitness, and we're supposed to mimic it while the instructors, the one we watch, but we can all see and interact with each other at the same time. And other activities.
Yeah. Where are you, Anne? I think I've asked you before.
I'm in Denver.
Okay, you're in Denver. I'm in North Carolina, and she's in Texas. So we are all over the country.
Yeah. We sure are.
All over, yet in one place.
And yet in one place.
Yeah, I'm just, I definitely, well, technology isn't 100% amazing. There's always going to be stuff that's difficult about technology. There's so much good to it. And I don't know how I would have survived the pandemic without, being able to be online and connect with people online. So,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean,
agree with you.
definitely, if this had happened in the 80s or 90s before we had the internet, the pandemic would have been more like not just a pandemic, but a tragedy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. As much as they profess that, because of the pandemic, there was so much more mental health issues. It would have been, is nothing compared to what would have been back then, because at least here we have the outlets of internet communication rather than snail mail letters. Can you imagine?
Well, and also the internet-based healthcare that we got because of insurance deciding to cover virtual appointments because of the pandemic. And some insurances like mine still covers certain types of doctors to be seen virtually. No problem, what kind of doctor. 'Cause an ear doctor can't check out my ear virtually, but
Yeah.
a therapist or psychiatrist can do it virtually.
yeah, I'm very grateful I get to see both my therapists and psychiatrists virtually. That's amazing, and I, not having to drive to see them is just great.
You saying that, I'm curious, because I've seen therapists as well, but in person. Have you noticed any difference in, like, mine was always noticing body language when I was there, and so there's a limited amount of body language that they pick up on virtually like this?
Yeah, I think there's definitely drawbacks to it. I feel like one of the things, I think sort of the biggest one is not being in that sort of quote unquote sacred space. You're in your own house. You might have people who could overhear you or whatever.
Yeah.
You're not sort of there with them. Um, you know, you, you're looking into their eyes on a screen. You're not looking to their actual eyes. So, there's definitely not being there physically with them, I think. For me, it was harder at the beginning, and then over time, it's become easier.
Okay.
But there are definitely some drawbacks, yeah.
Well, I agree too, because like with my therapist I just saw, after being sick, so I had to quarantine for something like 5 or 6 days, and I got deeply depressed. I actually wanted to go out and be in person to see her and not just to have a Zoom session. So I actually Ubered over to her office because there's something about the actual interaction with people, that's in-person interaction, that I do just because I'm at her office, and her admin assistants and all these other people in her office know me. So we all have some kind of conversation beyond just my session with her. And so that's very valuable to me, that lifts my spirit from just simply interacting with people, that if I was waiting to meet her on Zoom, then she'd be the only one I actually interact with, as opposed to all these other people while I'm waiting on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I just have a thing with driving where I'm
Yeah.
not a big fan of it, and I don't have the money for Uber, so
Yeah.
I admit, yeah. Now I do know people on Medicare can use Uber with Medicare rides if they're in an area that does not have like a bus or other kind of more affordable free transportation,
mhm.
or public transportation, I should say. It's not really free, but it's public.
Yeah. Our town
Uh,
doesn't have much of that.
Right, and in Houston has the Metro bus, but it doesn't go out to Katy or around Katy to Brookshire and all these other areas that beyond Houston itself. So being in the Katy area and the Brookshire, there isn't a Metro. So if I don't use Uber, I don't get around. And those are the areas where Medicare Advantages are willing to cover the cost of a ride to be through Uber or Lyft or other rides like that, and not the government, more affordable ones like the Metro bus. Now, if you live in an area that has a Metro bus, that's all it'll cover for you.
Yeah.
You can't then live in those areas and then decide to use a taxi.
Got it.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've never heard about that before, so that's good to know.
Yeah, I talk a lot about Medicare Advantages on this show because a lot of people I know who have mental illnesses are also on disability and probably have a Medicare plan, like a Medicare Medicaid coverage.
Mhm.
And so they probably also, if they're not aware of it, could get a Medicare Advantage, which would be additional benefits added to their Medicaid and Medicare coverage. Like my
Got
Medicare Advantage covers my glasses and vision tests. It covers my gym membership and other stuff like that that I couldn't afford. But since I have the Medicare Advantage plan, it pays all that for me, which then goes back to our mental health, because if I can go out and interact at the gym and do a workout and other things that are good for my mental health, then I'm probably going to cost the insurance a lot less money on mental health just by having a gym membership.
Not to mention the physical health, because you're doing something healthy for your body, preventive wise, for other parts of your health. And it's not just your mental health that the gym helps.
Right.
So, but still, that's overall that they'd rather pay a couple $100s a month for a gym membership than to pay how many thousands in medical and mental health expenses for me, because I cannot access something like that to get good health,
Yeah.
or at least access to quality of life.
Interesting. Very cool. Do we have any other topics for today?
Well, we pretty much nailed what we came on with, just talking about the, viral illnesses or viruses going around and how they impact the mental illnesses. And then, tying it to the movies and all that related to your books. Did y'all have any thoughts related to that, or maybe something else related to what we, ideas?
Sure. Yeah, let me see what else. Um, so one of the things, with your favorite movies, when you're watching them, that's helpful is when you know what's going to happen. So you don't have to worry about, oh, what's going to come next, or be on the seat of on the edge of your seat kind of thing. That is actually really helpful for you to know what's going to come next. It's a comforting. It's you just feel better. So that's one of the reasons why people get so much out of watching the same movie, is because it gives you that sense of stability, of comfort. So
You can be more in the
Yes.
moment of what's happening rather than the anxiety or anticipation of what's going to happen.
Exactly. And you can also get sort of in the flow and just sort of be one with the movie, basically. You can just almost get into a meditative state watching your favorite movies because you're just sort of there experiencing it
I'd never
and you're
thought of it
not.
that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's very, very true.
So, a lot of people when they meditate, they listen to the same music or they watch the same video or they, you know, listen to something on the Calm app or whatever that they've listened to before. I know for me, I use the Calm app and I get that free through Kaiser Permanente. But there's a lot of apps out there that can give you meditation stuff, and you can use YouTube and whatever. But I tend to use a lot of the same things over and over again, just because they work for me. So I think that's
Familiarity.
something, yeah, familiarity. So
But
that's
that
something
opens
to
something
think about.
interesting. I've never understood meditation. What is it or how do you do it?
Sure, I would say meditation, what it is concentrating on something, whether that's your breath or music or a person in the room saying something, um, or guided meditation that's on a video or audio. So you've got some kind of prompt usually, and then you sort of follow along with it. Does that make sense? Does that sound correct? What do you think, EJ?
I'm not very versed in meditation. The only one I've known is the where you pretty much close your eyes, get as a little sensory, like touching your own hand or whatever, and like you said, focusing on one topic. Um, it's never been good for me because that gets me too far inside my own head, and I go to bad places there.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see how listening to a music to hold you in the moment or listening to a guided conversation of calm, positive, enlightening type things would be helpful that way. But it really is just, from what I understand, just getting into a quiet, unbusy area where you can just focus in and be calm and take a breath, because so much of life is busy and noisy, and even in a quiet place it's noisy. I've noticed, like when I'm getting ready for bed or I'm reading or I'm just playing a card game or something, as soon as I put that away and I lie down, if there's not white noise going on, all of a sudden it is so loudly quiet, even though I've been doing something just as quiet. There's no music going on with my card game or anything. The minute I stop that and actually close my eyes, it is deafeningly quiet. It's an odd sensation to think that there's not any other noise going on while I'm playing my card game, my solitaire or whatever, just to try to focus me in and clear my head. It's the same ambient noise, but as soon as I turn off the visual, it becomes more obvious how quiet it is.
Yeah.
It's a very odd sensation, but I've noticed it a lot
But by
lately.
obvious, is that more peaceful or is it disturbing?
Usually it's more peaceful. Sometimes it's more disturbing in that it jolts me instead of, and I'm like, why is it so quiet? But then I'm a white noise person. I like having the fan going even in the winter, but just to have that little bit of noise is it holds me here. Whereas when it's real
I'm
quiet,
with you.
then I'm all of a sudden aware of the bird going off outside or the car driving past, those those ambient noises that are sudden, whereas a fan is a more
Sudden
constant.
and inconsistent, right?
Yes, yes. Where the white noise just stays level, but it's good to have the silent, the deafeningly silent, because our world is so busy and noisy and constant input.
Mhm.
It's important to have that silence, but it can be disconcerting at times.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why sometimes I'll listen to something, sometimes like a story, or listen to like a guided meditation when I'm trying to fall asleep, just to have something to listen to and to sort of lull me to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Little Women is one of my favorite things to listen to at night.
I have read the letters off that book my entire life.
Is this kind of like a Helen Keller type bestseller of all times?
I don't know how high it is like on the all-time bestseller list, but I'd probably be pretty high.
I would think so. Yeah.
And they've
And what's the name of
made
it?
like
Little
20
Women.
different versions of that book on video. Sorry, for movies and TV series, they've made at least 20 different versions of
Yeah.
Little Women.
Yeah. But I have one of the original books.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
From the 60s.
From the 1860s?
No, 1960s.
Oh,
It's not one of the originals, but it's not like a first edition or anything, but
okay, gotcha.
it's not the remakes, the rewrites and the edited versions and changes made and all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
It's old. Like me.
Hey, you
Yeah,
said it, nobody else.
Yeah, the version I have is not that old. I also have it on my Kindle. That's where I've read it most recently.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm more of an audiobook person. Do you know if the original or any of those are on audiobooks?
oh,
Probably because it's a classic. So yeah, it would be in audiobooks.
so
Have some
good.
Kleenex ready. I'll warn you.
I'll be prepared then. So is it like emotionally up and down, or why do you say have Kleenex available?
You want to tell her?
Well, I'm just
Like
asking
any
about
good
the
story,
emotional
like
side.
any good story, it has its heart-jerking parts.
Okay, so this is heartbreaking. Okay.
Yeah.
I like kind of peaceful.
For the most part, it's very peaceful.
Okay.
Yeah, for the most part, it's not a high drama,
Okay,
murder
so that's what I was
mystery kind of
wondering.
thing. No, it's an old-fashioned, but it can pull at your heartstrings.
What
Would you say
every
that was
book?
accurate, Anne?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I would say the vast majority of it is very peaceful, very nice, and about sisters who all get along. Well, two of them sometimes have spats, but in general, they get along. They enjoy each other's company. Um,
Very
and
old-fashioned.
yeah, very old fashioned. And their mom, and there's this whole thing where their dad is gone. It's set during the Civil War and the few years after it. The dad's in
Oh,
the
I
Civil
love
War.
movies from the Civil War. I don't know why, but I mean, books and stuff to take place in that time. I love that. Like the
I love
romance
it.
where it's a southern one dating a northern one and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah,
You'll love it.
so
You would definitely enjoy that book.
yeah, definitely check it out. So, but yeah, I was like, oh, how long has it been since the last time I read Little Women? I got to read it again.
Yeah.
And the sequels, have you read the sequels, EJ?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So I feel like maybe we talked about this last week. Did we talk about this last week?
About sequels, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so.
That sequels
So-
never really live up to the rarely live up to the hype, at least not maybe the second one, but after that it goes downhill quickly.
Exactly. Exactly.
And since I'm in this whole book writing thing and I'm about to start a new book, tell me what you mean by that. Like they're not as good as you planned, or they're not as well written, or
No, Hollywood, in my opinion, they find one that is a blockbuster, and so they're like, hey, let's do another one. And the second one's usually about as good, but after that it starts getting really off key. It's like, okay, they're just doing it for the money because it's a big name, and so people are going to go see it because it's a big name. And like Rocky has how many, or Halloween has how many renditions, and it just goes on, and you're like, okay, enough already.
So like I would say with book sequels, it sort of depends on how popular the author is.
Yeah.
Too. And it depends on how they feel about writing sequels. Because, for instance, for Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women, she was not crazy about writing the sequels to that book. That book was incredibly important to her. It was based on her life. The sequels, not so much, because in this, yeah, I won't give away what happens in the first book, but that's the ending of the Little Women is not how it went with her. That's not how it went in her real life.
Yeah.
right? Because it's
So
probably like what I write, where true life based fiction books that I write that are based on my real life, but I paint it out to be better for the intent of the whole Hollywood glamour of happy ever after ending, without actually saying that, by saying that these two had broken hearts and they got back together and whatever, right?
Right.
That it was a happy ending, but usually with authorship or script writing or some other creation of a storyline or movie, that what actually happened is not what it makes it in the entertainment world.
I think it's more the Hollywood movie sequels that I think of as, okay, it's just not as good as the first. But books, like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Jack Reacher stories, or they're like mysteries and stuff, but there's one character that goes through a whole series of books and all his different adventures. And those are great. To me, those aren't sequels. I guess I think of
See,
like,
but they are sequels. They're just book sequels instead of movie sequels.
and maybe it's just the Hollywood side that to me goes downhill quickly. Or even, and again, Hollywood TV series, the first 2 years of a series seem really great, and then after that they just start dragging it on, and it just goes way off topic, in my opinion, the latter years.
You must not be a fan of NCIS, and some of these others have been ongoing.
some of them are good, but we watch a lot of old series on DVD, and we'll get to like the third season of it and go, okay, this isn't as good as it used to be.
I think it really depends on the show for that.
It does.
And go back to the original question, I think you were onto something, Anne, which said it depends upon the author or artist of whatever kind that created the idea and the streamline, the whole, storyline.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes, like, somebody will ghostwrite some of the sequels and stuff like that. Like, some famous authors won't even be the ones who write some of the sequels.
Yeah. Well, I hate to do this, ladies, but we are running out of time.
Oh.
Do you have any announcements, Jennifer, of things coming on? Because we all know that you always have stuff going on in your life. New niches, new angles, new. passions popping up. She's pulling out her notes. See, I told you she always has a ton going on.
Oh, it's not really something. I just wanted to sort of brag on something. I
Oh,
get to
please
be
do.
on a panel for, there's a science fiction convention in Denver that's coming up over the Thanksgiving weekend that I'm going to be on a panel talking about geekdom and mental wellness.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah. So sort of how things like Star Trek and science fiction movies and things like that, how they affect your mental health.
Nice.
Well, can you take note of that and maybe talk about it or do a replay or something on the following week's mental health awareness?
Kind of give us a recap of what happens.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
with the message and the different factors of mental health with all that. I think
Yeah, I
our
can do
listeners
that.
are probably interested in hearing that too.
Sure.
That'd be great.
And then I'll get to sell my book and it'll be a good time. So,
Definitely.
but that's what I'm thinking about doing for my second book, is writing about TV shows, specifically like Star Trek and The Good Place are the two ones that I want to, like a bunch of different Star Trek series, and The Good Place
Excellent.
are the two ones I want to work on.
Excellent. All right, Jennifer, just waiting on you. Ding, 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 ding.
So I can't find it in my notes, but I think it's November 28th that Project iHeart is having a party where they're welcoming guest people to come into the Bob Rush base that's in Illinois. If you're interested in attending the Bob Rush event, to get free food, uh, interaction, entertainment, there'll be even the mayor there, as well as possibly the governor of Illinois being there as well. Different people of high influence will be there, but it's open for everyday people to please come to get free food. It's for veterans and their families. This is a particular organization, Project Die Hard, that specifically serves veterans and helps their families as well. If you are interested in learning more, please go to projectdiehard.org or email me at jen@projectdiehard.org. JENN@projectdiehard.org.
All right. Well, thank you
Oh.
again. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, and also for those of you who may not have heard, November 6th, which was last Monday, we relaunched the PDH Mission Monday, which we'll have again tonight at 6:30 Central. Going live with the CEO, Brian Gibson, on the PDH Mission Monday podcast that is part of the Project Die Hard mission, but plays on the Giles Coffee Chat channel each Monday at 6:30 Central.
Excellent. Okay, well, again, thank you for being here with us today or listening to our rebroadcast. Anne, it was great to have you on board again today. Very interesting conversations we've had. And be sure to join us again next week, same time, same bat channel for a mental health awareness.
Wait a minute, are you sure about that? Next week is Thanksgiving week.
Oh, you are right. You are right. We are off next week. So
Right,
after Thanksgiving.
Yes, it'll be in 2 weeks, 2 Mondays from now. I think it's the 30th or something like that.
27th.
27th. Okay. So that's when
27th.
we'll
So
be
we're
back.
off on the 20th. We won't be here the 20th, but we'll be here on the 27th again for another podcast. So be sure to, and again, that's at 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share our channel or page or YouTube, there, wherever you found us, and check out our website to find out more about other podcasts and shows that we have available. That's jensbooksandmore.com. Is that correct, Jennifer?
Yes, that's our website. And then if they go on their favorite podcast app, it's Jaws Coffee Chat, JAWS Coffee Chat.
Excellent. All right. Well, until next time, we wish you a productive and enjoyable week. And we hope to hear from you in the comments or reach out to us on the website, Jen's Books and More, or Jaws Coffee Chat.